Material Madness is one of those packs that I always say is one of the better values in the game, and it's really only one of the better values when you still need most of what it offers. When you get to the point where I am at, where I only need like one or two of the boxes that it offers, then the value does dip. But if you're still needing most, if not all, of what it offers, all the boxes, etc., especially newer accounts that still needs to build up their gear, Material Madness is one of the best ones to get. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what you should be aiming for realistically, especially if you're on a budget. Not like you can buy the $20, $50, and $100 pack every time it comes out, which nowadays is like every 2 or 3 days. But if you're on a budget, let's say you get the $5 and $20 pack every time it comes out or every other time, etc. I'm going to go ahead and give you the perfect way to try to maximize what you can get. Now, this is mainly going to be a set that you can work on without having to sacrifice items. And what I mean by that is, for instance, you're going to get Mega Maggot boxes, but because that has an accessory that you can probably use 3 times, for instance 3 Blight Rings, you're gonna have to go a little slower if you just aim for 3 Blight Rings. But the set that I'm gonna go ahead and give you here is going to be using only 1 box for each slot, which means that you can maximize the profit of every single box into making sure that you keep upgrading that item. Now, let's go ahead and go one by one and essentially tell you which ones you should be aiming for. Now, keep in mind, and a little bit of a disclaimer, this does not mean that these are the only items you should go for, because the drop rates, etc., that all matters too. But if you want to focus on one slot for one specific box that's not going to be used in any other slot, this set that I'm going to give you is going to be absolutely amazing. Now, let's go ahead and start with the main hand. The main hand is pretty straightforward. That is going to be the Frostwing Greatsword. Not only is it a fairly easy item to keep upgrading, whether you go into blue, purple, or gold, but it's going to be using a box that's not really used a lot, and that is the Frostwing. So on that one, even though it's a great main hand weapon, the Frostwing boxes, you're only going to be focusing on this. So that's the #1 item there for your main hand. Now the second slot is going to be the helmet. Now for this one, there is actually going to be 2 options, and that is going to be either the Bumble Helm or the Beast Helm. Now, I would suggest the Beast Helm because it seems like it's a much better drop rate, but if you go the Bumble Helm route, that's fairly well as well. But the one that I would definitely not suggest you focus too much on is the Wormbone Coronate, because that one you will need for the research speed, but don't try to jewel it up with ranged gear and all that, because if you're missing the jewels, it's not going to do you much good. So try to focus on one of these 2, whichever one you choose. Stat wise, the Bumble Helm is going to be a little better than the Beast Helm, just slightly. But at the same time, the Beast Helm will probably be a slightly easier one to upgrade. But again, it depends on the drop rates. And in this case, I would go Beast Helm. Either or though, doesn't really matter. Now, the armor set, this one is always going to be the Firewall Plate. The reason why is because the stats are just absolutely amazing. It actually is up there comparable to Champion Gear. Now, of course, it's not as good as Champion Gear. But when you look at the actual stats that it gives, this is an amazing plate. And the one that drops it with the Ancient Blueprints, it's gonna be very, very easy. The Ancient Blueprints is actually one of the easier ones to obtain in all of the boxes you're going to get. So even though it takes 8, that's actually not as bad as it would seem. So definitely go Firewall Plate. And even at blue grade, it's still a good plate. Now for the leg item, I would definitely suggest the Dragon's Talon. Now, there is also another option as the Storm Tacit, but that one is way more difficult to try to upgrade. Also, try to stay away from the Gargantuan Belt, as that one only gives you cavalry stats. Definitely go with the Dragon's Talon, not only because it gives you army stats, it gives you two troops that it'll power up, but it's much easier to actually upgrade. The drop rates for this is actually one of the best ones, so definitely go with Dragon's Talon. Now for the offhand. Now, this is one that you can go either way. You can go Eternal Codex if you want to be more offensively. You can also go Winter Mitts, because Winter Mitts does offer really nice army stats. And also Winter Mitts, it might be just a bit better if it's you going to be taking the hit. But my choice would be Eternal Codex just because it's more of an offensive item and I'm more of an offensive player. So I would definitely recommend the Eternal Codex. But there's no doubt that the Winter Mitts are much easier to upgrade and are just as comparable. So if you can get the Winter Mitts to gold while your Eternal Codex is still like in purple, for instance, I would still lean towards the Winter Mitts until the Eternal Codex can match the level that the Winter Mitts is on. So this one is a toss-up. I would definitely suggest the Eternal Codex, but Winter Mitts are just as well. Now the accessories. Now there is where it becomes a little bit tricky because, like I was mentioning before, there's a lot of people that might want to go 3 Blight Rings, but when you do that, you're kind of going slow motion as far as upgrading because there's only one box that you can get this from. But I'm going to go ahead and give you a perfect 3 accessories that you can use without having to actually do duplicates, etc. Now, of course, the first one is going to be a Blight Ring because Blight Rings are just really great value. The drop rate for the Mega Maggot is super high. I think it's like 10%. It's one of the highest as well. And the stats are just amazing. The next one is going to be a Burning Scroll. Basically the same thing. It's somewhat cheap to make, and it's going to give you army attack and army HP, and a lot of people don't value army stats the way that they should be, but it is absolutely crucial for you to be building up your army stats. Don't worry so much about individual attack stats like cavalry, range, blah blah blah. If your army stats are high, then that means that those other stats are going to be fairly high as well. Now the last one is going to be, with no surprise, the Ambrosial Cup, because the Ambrosial Cup, even at purple grade, for instance, the one that I have, is already slightly better than my gold Blight Ring. So even if you can get your cup to like blue, that's still really good. So this is the set right here, and if you notice, every single item will use its own specific box. So you got Frostwing, you got Saberfang, etc, etc. All of these items you'll only use one specific box. So every time you open up a certain box, you can only look forward to upgrading that specific item instead of having to, okay, do I take this one to purple and then have 2 purples, or do I go to gold, etc. You don't have to worry about that. Not only that, but this set right here has an amazing amount of max army HP, which is something that you absolutely want, especially if you go with Winter Mitts like this. You're going to be having an army that is going to be really rough, especially if they're going to be the ones rallying you or hitting your fort, etc, etc. Now there are other options that you can go for, like for instance you can go for the Skull Crusher, but just keep in mind that those are just going to be much more expensive. And also notice that I tried to stay away from things like a Gargantuan Belt, Wormbone Coronet, etc. just because those items, while they are good, undeniably they're good items and you should take them up when you see fit, those as far as your main set that you want to focus on, they only really boost one troop type. So for instance, if I was to have something like this and I'm taking a rally, I'm going to be hurting myself because I'm not boosting as many troops as I can, and that goes along with army max HP, army attack, etc. So definitely try to get this set right here, since you just have to worry about each specific items without worrying, and that's the one that I would recommend. Once you get Material Madness and you get these to a level that you feel comfortable with, then maybe start tinkering out and see what else you can make, because nowadays Material Madness is just super good. But yeah, this is one of the sets I would definitely recommend, especially as a newer account. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. By the way, before I go, as far as jewels go, unless you have a lot of jewels, try to make every single item infantry, cavalry, and ranged attack, and don't try to just wait for the gold ones. If you can get them all to purple, even better, because 4 purples is better than 1 gold. Keep that in mind. But yeah, Appreciate you guys for watching, and until later, bye.